We have a great panel, many of who are known to you, these organizations. So can I invite these people to come and take a seat in this order, because in Jaffna we found people switched orders and the audience didn't know who was who, which was odd. But these people are all known, but still. Nipunika, she's right here, Nipunika Ruhunage from the CEO of Sarvodaya Fusion. Very happy to have you here, all the way there. Kumar Lopez, who's the CEO of the Sri Lanka Press Institute, please. Deepanjalie Abeywardena, Deputy Director of Verité Research and Head of the Media and Politics Division. Rahul Namboori, who's the CEO of Fact Crescendo. And my colleague Isuru Samaratunga, who is the Research Manager on this particular project. I'm not going to introduce all of these people. You all have bios, which are moderately long, that are handed out in the package. Thank you. So, this is a weird little research in the sense the experiment is exactly what it is, which is an experiment, right? In psychology, you people bring people into a lab on, test these things on 12 people, right? That's like what a lot of psychology literature is built on. We try to do better, where we try to get different demographics, and it was actually, psychologists will say, okay, 120, 130 people, that's great. But we are testing a particular intervention, a game developed by you, a training that you all are doing, etc., putting people in. It's in a relatively controlled setting after all, right? And it's only one part of what you all do. Now, we fully recognize that addressing this requires a lot more, not these isolated interventions. And you all yourselves have a lot of, let's say, truth-infusing initiatives that are going on. So I want you all to maybe in under 2 minutes, if you can, starting with Nipunika, what does Sarvodaya do? Talk to us about the training. Talk to us about the range of sort of activities that are meant to address this issue that you do.
Okay. First of all, I should congratulate LIRNEasia, Helani, Isuru and the team for putting this information into a forum like this and arranging all these valuable discussions for a bigger audience, where the message should be definitely a well taken message should be communicated. So, to answer on what you ask, on what we do as Sarvodaya Fusion, let me put it in a very short way. We are, as Isuru perfectly said, a digital literacy trainers. That is the core area Sarvodaya Fusion has been working since 2007, since the inception. So our trainings are sort of 45 minutes to 1 hour goes, if you look at the time, and it trains on spotting misinformation. Basically, the training has a practical component to identify misinformation, malinformation, and then tailored, or maybe it is designed to address an audience of low to moderate audience of digital literacy. So we look at the number of people we train in a year. So we believe in numbers. And then the secondary thing, we look at the diversity of the audience or the communities we train. It could be children, students, mothers, housewives, professionals from different segments, different ethnicities, and different representations across the country. So
and how many people have you trained at the moment? Do you have a rough number?
So it's about 2 million as of now.
2 million people. So
yes,
this is actually training at scale. And I think you do it inside schools as well,
inside
right?
schools, universities, different, different societies, different community segments we do. And then the secondary thing, what we believe when doing this kind of interventions or training is the cascade mechanism. We encourage the ones who are coming to our trainings, who are getting trained by us, to go home or to go back to their communities and train 1 or 2 other individuals carry that message so that they develop a force across the country, a force of digitally literate community.
Yeah.
So that's what we do in Shamari.
Wonderful, thank you. Kumar, why do you have a WhatsApp web group?
Okay. So
Because I ask this because you can tell journalists to do better journalism, but you think a WhatsApp group is useful. Why?
I think it's also a channel where we found that journalists get information far more faster, right? The media group, and also it's more of the platform channel that most people tend to use for convenience. If you look at some of the global studies, Facebook usage was dropping, and then you saw IM channel, IM messaging tools were increasing. So we felt like this is where we should be. So our intervention has been in on the web, doing on WhatsApp, as well as we're going into TikTok, YouTube. But I think we have not looked at more of the numbers. We definitely want to increase the numbers, but
How many people are on the WhatsApp groups, for example?
If you look at this channel alone, probably we don't have that much. Probably got close to about 300. But then we have other communities of practice that gets cascaded over and over from those.
They'll
groups.
Forward it on and
yes,
so
they'll
on.
Forward
Okay.
and so on.
All right.
But what we have seen is that how people have actually, who have been on the group, who have been engaged, right? We may not have the numbers, but we see people how they engage, where they get back to you and say look, I got this, can you fact check this for us, right? And for us, we have also had the strategy of using the WhatsApp group among journalists, among media, so that gets disseminated in the mainstream media as well, which has a far more reach.
But anyone can join the WhatsApp group,
Anyone
is it?
can join the WhatsApp group.
Okay.
But we have been been very focused, we want people who are really interested, because we just don't want anybody just to come in, but anybody could join the WhatsApp group. That's how we've gone in.
Okay, great. Deepanjalie, Verité does a lot of things. It is based on the word verité as well, veritas as in truth. And fact-checking is not the only thing that you do. Talk to us very briefly about the range of things that contribute to creating truthful narratives that you do.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and well done with the presentation and the study as well. As Verité Media Division that I'm representing now, there are at least 4 interventions that I can speak of very briefly. One is where we embrace the slow and intentional learning, which is what's also coming out from the findings, that people prefer to have in-person sessions, but they are not at a mass scale as Sarvodaya does. This is where we try to reach out to various stakeholders that include journalists and civil society actors and school children, mostly outside of Colombo, so that as Isuru's presentation also showed, there's a tendency for the rural areas to also have, to benefit more from these sessions. This is where we embrace the slow and intentional learning, because we want to pace it out and ensure that these stakeholders can absorb it better. The second one is where we expose contrasting and divergent narratives in Sri Lankan society that actually show the deep level of polarization that we have along the linguistic, ethno-religious lines that the presentation also referred to. This is where, for example, when the UN Human Rights Commission is being discussed in the media, this is where the Sinhala media sees it as too much of an intervention, and the Tamil media sees it as too little of an intervention to intervene their problems. The third intervention we do is where we prevent the biases, negative stereotypes and prejudices that really make it a conducive environment for information disorder to nurture itself. For example, now as the presentation done by Shanali shows that there is trust in legacy media. Legacy media is also the main manufacturer of most of these biases. They are manifesting the inherent biases and prejudices that we have in society. For example, when there is racial profiling that happens over time, and when it is only certain individuals from a certain community that are frequently profiled racially and not others, then there's this tendency to show that or think that it is these individuals who are at fault for various criminal activities or antisocial activities. So we really take a stance, we take steps in order to show that how these negative prejudices towards various groups such as women can really be problematic and can pave the way for information disorder. The last type of intervention we do is where we really problematize and prevent the untruths popularized by key decision makers and those who can be considered influential. Because as the presentation once again referred to, there tends to be trust in individuals who you mentioned the word local leadership, if I'm not mistaken. So there's trust in legacy media, and the parallel is that there's also trust in the individuals who are considered to be key decision makers. So when there are untruths that are popularized by key decision makers, for example, during the period of COVID-19, we saw how certain bureaucrats said that we have not reached the community level, the spread of the virus, which was not true. And we also saw some of the politicians at the time said that Sri Lanka was the best in terms of combating the virus, which was not true. And when there are untruths of this kind, it is very important to really challenge those untruths to prevent the information disorder.
Rahul, why do you fact check and how do you select the stories for fact checking?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me here. And I'm not a very good speaker, so you'll have to bear with me.
You're doing very well so far.
Kudos to your study, like the research that you have done. And the findings that are there are similar to what we too see in India and other parts. Now, it comes to why do we fact check? So one simple answer would be, we started it, we'll go how it started. So in India, what we used to do before, that was around 2011-12, we used to report misleading ads to Advertising Council of India. And we've been doing that. Gradually from there, we saw, a need for more evidence-based, news or reporting. And in 2018, we started fact-checking. We started fact-checking with multiple Indian languages. So why is it was just a shift from what we were doing to what was required. And then gradually it started growing from there.
But there are lots of news items that are out there. How do you pick, this one is worthwhile fact checking? There might be 10 untruths that you know. Where do you put your resources?
So, how we have, in our organization, how we have divided is every region, every language has its own people working. So there is no, division of getting people from one place working on other stories. Now how we do it is, it's very important on immediate harm. So if there is something which has an immediate harm to public health, economy, that will be picked first. It doesn't matter if it is trending or if it is viral. If it is there, we will do it.
Even if it's not trending, if it's one tweet, but it's likely to cause harm.
If it has come to our funnel, we see there is an immediate harm or may lead to harm. There are stories that we have done which got viral after, the claim got viral after a week or probably someday. So at least we had that ready with us because it was there in our funnel.
Yeah.
So that is the first thing. Second, if there's a grant or something which is specifically for election, we would make sure we have an active eye on all the claims those are going viral related to those
to the election,
or maybe climate, and we would pick. But then for climate we will have a different team only working. We will not have our resources move from one place to another so that nothing gets disturbed.
So Deepanjalie, I want to come back on this topic. So there's a judgment made on this story can be really harmful, so I need to actually put some facts behind this. Now, for example, when you look at politicians and what they say, I assume most of it is lies, right? So how do you pick which lie to fact check and put it out there?
Yeah, so all those interventions that I spoke of, like factcheck.lk, the Divide, EthicSci, and most of the platforms that we are running, one common denominator that we look at for all of that work is how much of an educational output is bringing, is what we are driving towards. So for example, if it is something that's going to help improve the information integrity and the public understanding, that is exactly what we are after. For example, if there is a misreporting, let's say, on Sri Lanka's foreign reserves, then that's what factcheck.lk is going to do. Then if there is, let's say, there's some sort of a narrative about certain racial groups, that is what EthicSci is doing. And if there is a contrasting narrative that now we will probably see quite soon on Chemani, that's what the Divide does. So by doing all of this, what we want to do is to drive that answerability, drive that accountability. But that's not the entirely the intervention that we are doing, because apart from driving that answerability or accountability, we also look at traceability. And through traceability, it's a limited intervention. What we do is not to say what is true or what is untrue through traceability. That's where we give the online users the opportunity to authenticate the original source. Right now, the biggest issue is also politicians, but also then there is a lot of online content that is quite not true in the online space. And right now, people also don't know whether there's an institute or an individual behind that information. So what we do with this traceability that is now coming via Traceit, a publishing standard that anyone can actually replicate, allows users to actually help them to trace that specific information back to the original source and see where this is coming from. So accountability, traceability are what we do with the purpose of enhancing education.
Yeah, so I think maybe in the afternoon session there's some conversation about using some AI tools sort of to really understand where narratives emerge from and so on and so forth. So this brings about another thing. So there's a opinion out there that you know is wrong. How often can you not counter it because the data is not there? The evidence is not there. This is maybe for all three of you, like, to fact check. You need to show the truth. No, you can't give another opinion because then you're still in that chamber, right? Maybe Rahul and then Kumar and Deepanjalie?
So, yes, that's a very thin line. Actually, that's a very debatable thing whether editors get into. Opinions are often presented as, now we see a pattern. You'll find a story which will have probably, 80% of what it is talking is giving facts and all, and 25% it will put in some sort of data which is false or opinionated, and it becomes very difficult. So opinions for us is a no, but if we feel this needs to come out, then we have started doing explainers on it.
No, but where do you get the data is what I'm trying to understand, the proof. You all are not opinion makers, you all are at a slightly higher level where you say, look, so and so said this, but the data or the evidence doesn't suggest this, right? Is the data always easy to find?
Well, if it is figures, data, quoted, I'll give an example in India. Often economic previous government's data is cited. Well, those data get published. It's easy to dig that data out, get it, out in public. But if it is an opinion which is just vague, it does not have a data, it becomes difficult. We would not.
You will not try to fact check it. What about the availability of actual data?
I mean, just to go back on a few other points that said here, I think what to select, what not to select also depends on the context and the situation to prioritize whether this false information is going to have an impact, what is the intensity of that impact. So for example, during elections, we fact check things, okay, this is going to have an impact, which will have an impact on the decision making, therefore you pick that one. Because most of our fact checking units, we know we don't run a 119 unit. We don't have that number of resources. So that plays a major role in regard to like, what can you pick, which is going to be the most impactful. That's how we pick
You
the fact
have
check.
to pick because you
have
can't
to pick.
scan everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, we get requests saying, can you check this, can you check this, but we won't be able to. The other challenge that we have here is like, based on the resources, by the time we fact check, get the right data and do it, that false information has gone miles and millions apart.
Absolutely.
By the time we get it right and we post it, it's too late. And what we do, probably, I think we also need to understand it's a drop in the ocean. But I believe while we see AI as what we call a disruptive or is going to make our role challenging, it can also help us in a lot of ways. But going back to data, I think this is where the open data makes it easy for us to get information. And it's also important for fact checkers to start building on data. Right? I mean, like having strategies to build data repositories so that we can pick data from where we are, and we need to have a systemized approach of collecting data. One of the things that we do is like when we see like this is going to be the scenario, this is going to be the context, we try to pre-bunk false information. So what we do is we collect data and we do data files. For example, on economic things. We know like this, okay, for example, elections are coming up. We know these would be the areas where false information are likely to be presented. We collect the data ahead and we try to do fact files so that we could send those out so that people do know like, okay, something like this was there, what they're doing is going to be wrong. We also try to do live fact checking during debates and also during rallies where we know like these are going to be the areas the manifesto says this is what the data is going to be. And then we have the fact file so that we can actually push some things out. But it's not always easy to have all the facts because we don't have the culture in our society also to put all the facts out there.
And also, I mean, we didn't have a lot of government data out anywhere. Now the one initiative that was trying kicked us out, right? The open government partnership said, no thank you because you all are not performing. Yeah. Anything else to add, Deepanjalie? Because
I'll be really brief here, but Mahoshadi, who also runs factcheck.lk, is here to add if there is the need. Mainly, we go for publicly available data, but if there is data that is inaccessible, we also file RTI requests. And there are so many fact checks that we have done using RTI, but it's always publicly available data that we go after because we do not want to trust the opinion makers or decision makers who may also not be entirely true.
Absolutely. So I want to, go on,
Nipunika.
Yes, please.
I think when you're starting, the conversation said, the span of attention is what matters. So to reach to a wider audience, to show the real impact of the fact checkers, it's a collective effort, I believe, that we all should put. So it's not only the fact checkers that should be in the front face or the ones who should run the whole operation or the whole process. It should be a collective basket of different segments that should take the lead of the facts that check, because in the online space we see different generation. Gen Z their thinking pattern and how they interpret the information in online space is different. Their platforms are different. We saw in the research WhatsApp, YouTube, Facebook. That's not Gen Z. That's a different generation. We reflected. So I would say it's a basket of contributors that should take the effort of fact checkers forward.
That's right, and that leads me to my next question, which is how on earth do we get actually these messages out there, right? I mean, we all know from 2018 the research that was done on American Twitter users, which was one of the most systematic research papers, which showed bad and sensational news spreads faster and further than good and slow fact-checked news, right? And that was systematic, right? Our colleague Merle is trying to do something similar to see in Sri Lanka and Twitter, whether that is the case, because we've got access to a large data set. But that seems to be generally true, right? So how do we get these messages out there, which is really a question about how on earth do we measure the impact? Is it enough to fact check and put it out on a website? What metrics do you track? Now you talked about, you count the number of people who come, but not necessarily whether that has had an impact on them or something, right? So, I don't know, Deepanjalie, do you want to start? How do you measure impact? Because there's a lot of inputs. All this while we were talking about input, right? You pick the story, you need the data, you fact check, you put it out there. Okay, then what happens?
Yeah. So there are two ways through which we measure success. That's visible success and invisible success. Again, there are two forms that we look at when we are looking at visible success. How do we create answerability or accountability that I have already spoken of? And this is one measurement that really tells us about our impact. For example, this is the answerability that I'm speaking of on the production side, or those who are amplifying content. For example, during the period of COVID-19, there were online users and other consumers who really took the content from Ethics Eye that problematized racial profiling by two popular TV channels and held the media accountable. And that prompted the Ministry of Defense and Government Information Department to really issue guidelines saying that racial profiling should not happen towards COVID-19 patients. So that's one way of assessing.
So providing the evidence base so others can then take action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can take action, and we can also see that, especially through Ethics Eye, which is Ruhunage, who's running it here, who is also in the room, can also tell that how there is this diminished trajectory or downward trajectory in most of the ethical violations that we are evaluating, that we are monitoring, because that shows that there has been an impact on the production side. So we look at that visible success, that's one. Second, when we are able to change the conversation, change the direction in a conversation, we know that we have made an impact. For example, when there was this false narrative that singing the anthem in any other language other than Sinhala is a constitutional violation, we changed the direction of the conversation by fact-checking using the constitution itself. And when there is this false narrative that there was the amount of debt taken during the period from 2015 to 2019 was much higher than the 10-year period prior to that, we changed the conversation by fact-checking. So this is one way of measuring success, which is very much visible. But there's also this invisible success that we do not have a systematic way of evaluating so much, and that is the direct or indirect impact that we may have on the consumer. It is the consumer who drives answerability, but we cannot tell other than, like analyzing some of the comments that we get on these platforms, or when we have these chats with these individuals, then we know what the impact has been, but otherwise it's visible and invisible success.
Yeah. Rahul, how do you measure impact?
So, see, for websites, we do have our internal, just like any other organization does it, which is data analysis. What is your bounce state? What is the time people are spending? What are your page views? Who are your returning readers? Things like that. These are general. Apart from this, we've like we talked about interventions. So it was the same thing for us. Which are the different formats that we should try? Video format works well for Instagram, Gen Z audiences. Alone in Sri Lanka, I think we have around 3 to 4 million views. Our WhatsApp channel has grown to 50,000 subscribers. So this is impact. Like this is where
At least that means you're tracking eyeballs. People have come across your content.
Yes. And apart from this, the real impact we feel is the interaction that we get, both positive, negative, in terms of where we are wrong. Immediately we, it's shared to us, or we think, this is not right. Or if we've done something, interaction with those stories is something, so again, like it said, visible and invisible. Visible is data that you can track. Invisible is mostly based on interaction, generic interactions.
But it's also interesting, two different types of data. You're going for the qualitative narrative changes that you see, maybe, but you're not tracking scale, whereas you have some idea of scale because you're looking at repeat visitors, number of visitors over time, etc. Kumar, what do you look at if you think about impact?
Yeah, for us, we've been basically trying to get our info disseminated through the mainstream media and so on. So for us, our impact has been like, how often do you get the journalists, the newsrooms coming back to you and asking like, okay, look, can you fact check for us? Okay, you've done this, can you do this for us, right? And that for us is for us a way of real good engagement, right? And also good impact to say like, okay, look, the newsroom see the value in what we are doing and they also want to report it right.
Yeah.
Another interesting area that we, again, I think we're not gone on to the scale like what Nipunika said, but we also had this program in the schools, right, where we did programs to educate the school children, O-levels and A-levels on digital media literacy and fact-checking. And one of our approaches was to sustain the teachers' training, and which we got repeated requests to say that, look, we also want this, which indicated saying that, look, I mean, like, this is something that is needed. And I'm a strong believer that if we are to tackle, like, this phenomenon of false information, I think we have to go to the root of the education system, where it has to be. You mentioned about Norway doing it, and I would say like Finland has also been very successful in trying to build the critical thinking of their masses so that false information doesn't get easily rooted into the system.
Nipunika, how can we measure, other than this many people went, which is the input, how can we measure, I mean, has Sarvodaya done any thinking on, am I spending money on this and is it having an impact? I mean, it's a tough question. I don't think any of us have answered that, but as an organization that does a lot of training, how can you improve the impact of training and what can you track?
Okay. So question has two parts. I would first answer, how can you reach to a, how can you make an impact? And the second one, how do you track? So at Sarvodaya, what we do when we run this kind of interventions, we get connected with the ambassadors. We call them truth ambassadors. Let's say if we are talking on, if we are working on a campaign that is handling misinformation related to health. Deepanjalie very correctly said referred one period, COVID-19 period. So if you are doing such a campaign or such a project on tackling misinformation, our messages goes through doctors or healthcare practitioners. So we connect truth ambassadors to show the real impact or the real gravity of the points we are talking about to the audiences. To respond to the question of how do you measure the success, I would say as the digital literacy trainers, on the scale we are right now working at, the numbers, we don't have an accurate mechanism to track the impact, the real impact. So cascade, as I said, is one thing, like we on and off call the beneficiaries and ask how many you have trained. And then there is a misinformation spreading these days. For example, there was a recent one which related to the celebrities, their experiences and all. So we did one round of calling, or during an election we did a campaign called Edited the AI. And then we ask, how do you identify from the trained beneficiaries? So that's a very basic level of tracking we use.
So Isuru, in this study, we selected a particular form of impact, right? Which is, can people before and after identify better or worse when showed 40 cue cards? What were the other ways? What are the other things we could have tracked?
Yeah, I mean, things like whether those experimental study participants shared some of those information that we didn't capture in the experimental study, and also like what they do with the information when they see something online, right? So there are multiple ways that they can share it and talk with others. They can take the information into offline, and all those things can happen. But the way we design the research, I mean, it's practical. It is not practical to capture everything. And also, since now the misinformation and all that is mostly revolving around social media and all that, so there are other all sort of ways of like getting data of those, like how people behave online. So if we can have a kind of like a research or a understanding process designed to capture that plus and this kind of like human factors and other technological factors as well, then that would give us the good understanding, I would say.
Do you think we should change fundamentally how we communicate to people the truth? Should we be sensational and as clickbait-like as the falsehoods? Because that's what's getting the eyeballs, right? Like a really sensational, cool headline out there. Even I click, no? But the truth is boring in black and white and, we fact check this, whatever. Should we fundamentally change this? Like in Jaffna, we talked to somebody who is using comedy and media on TikTok to get the truth out there. That's fundamentally different. That's, you could say it's clickbait, but it's a different format. Should we be rethinking this? Because otherwise, how do we, I'm not talking about your kind of change, right? I mean, we can all say that changing the narrative among, let's say, the thinkers and the journalists is incredibly valuable. But if we are to reach the masses, should we be fundamentally doing things differently and be as red and yellow and clickbaity with the headlines or using different formats?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
We are Sri Lankans. We love badging and taking the credit. So the way how we take the message should not be like clickbaits, but it should be attractive. Like for older generation, let's say the Gen X or baby boomers. No.
You should at least not look at him when you say that, but yeah.
I'm so sorry. No. So if we are going to that generation, we should know what the language or the what messaging we should speak to their hearts, because they love to give advices. They love that the tone of giving advice attracts them. That gives lot of authority to them. So that kind of messaging should be there for them. Let's say, just like how said the direct message of clickbait, we can ask, do you know that you've been fooled? So that's something, you talk to their heart. And then if you want to reach to the younger audience, the kids or the youth, hey bro, do you know whether this is true or false? Can you tell me? So you should let them to speak. So that's the tone or the way how we address should be different. Definitely we should not fall into clickbait.
So in a way, like the tenets of good communication, know your audience and communicate to them is what you're saying, right? Isuru, you had this really weird experience one day. You came back from some field research. And, well, actually, I won't set it up. Just tell whether people could see what's a fact check and what's the truth.
Yeah, in the Q&A session also someone asked that similar kind of a question. But what we see that, especially, there are, like, if I explain the Sri Lankan news like websites and all that, you have like so-called the official news website and also like gossip type kind of like that news websites as well. Sometimes the same organization runs both and with that you have these fact-checking websites and all that. So actually when I talk to those people, those who performed really well in the experimental study that I presented, so he was like a good high scorer in the scales that we had all. Then he had exposed to fact-checking platforms and all that. So then I was talking to him. Then I tried to understand like actually what he thinks about the intervention that he exposed to. Right? So honestly, I had a hard time recalling what exactly he was like going through at the intervention at the test center, because honestly, he couldn't like see the difference between what is those gossip websites and what is those news actual websites, also the fact-checking websites. Because at one point he asked me, oh, I thought that website is to spread that sort of information, right? So then I couldn't leave him at that point, because I wanted to explain him, no, you didn't see that sort of website there, you saw something different. So he's a very young guy, the person that I talked to. So my concern is whether the format, how we present our fact-checked information. Should it be changed? How do we attract that people? Will they read all the descriptions and finally we'll get the message in the last sentence of all the long form, article that you have? Those are different.
So this is a high capacity person who scored high on all the testing, went through a website based intervention in our experiment, but thought he was looking at a fake news website. Okay. Yeah.
Can I come in really quickly there? I think that's where it's very important for us to actually focus on critical thinking as well, because communication alone is not going to solve this problem. So if I very quickly share an example from the production side, when we were doing some of these sessions outside of Colombo, we were referring to this one example where probably everybody knows here that there was this parody about Teacher Amma, and the parody was that there were statues made of Teacher Amma and they were available at 25,000 rupees. So this was published on the front page of the most read newspaper in the country, and because the journalist did not know that this was a parody. So the problem is partly maybe because of the way it's communicated, but we have to also really look at that critical skills, critical thinking skills, so that the people, especially the journalists, do not deceive themselves and they don't fall prey to believing parody, which is also very much important in society.
Yeah. And I think there the CRT2 measure that Shanali was talking about, which is trusting the information, which is often wrong, leads you to a wrong answer, which is where most Sri Lankans were on that left-hand side of the CRT2 scale, but not the left brain thinking, which requires you to think a little bit more, which leads you to another answer. This brings about, actually I want to come to you, Kumar. So, I mean, we are talking about all of this and how to change people because we are living in a fundamentally different world. We used to be in the world where journalists were the arbiters of truth to a great extent. And therefore, newsroom policies made sense, right? I'm not saying everyone followed it, but there was a point of control in a way. And from there, the information went, right? So in this world, I mean, look at, Deepanjali's explanation. It's sort of like the masses and some parody going back to the journalists and then coming back out. We are not going to spend the panel on journalism because there's another one, but is the journalist relevant as a fact checker and arbiter of truth? Can we say everyone with a broadcast medium like Twitter is now a journalist? Do journalists matter now in truth?
I guess at the right time my mic went off, right? So I'll use Deepanjali's mic, right? Sorry. No, I think it's still very much relevant because I strongly believe good journalism is what will actually keep the truth going. And even in the research, you still feel that there is that audience, there are the people who still trust the mainstream media. But again, how much is the mainstream media is falling into this prey of getting out with the info first. It's kind of a rat race they're also getting into, I believe. And that is what's pushing instances like what Deepanjali also said. I mean, you're not verifying, although there are code of ethics to say you need to verify, cross-check before you publish something. But the scenarios and the conditions at the moment where the newsrooms actually downsizing, the economic conditions, everything, sometimes is pushing them also to say look, we need to have content, we need to go out, and that is sometimes pushing them just believe. And again, not looking at the sources, not verifying. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle at the editorial level, it's a struggle at the journalism level. But I could also say there are still organizations that are still trying to do their best to ensure that journalism will be there. And journalism would be the forefront of getting the truth out there. Because at the end of the day, most of the time we find I know in the next panel, Nalaka would be tackling it and that panel would be tackling it. But I think not everybody has access to go all the way up to find the truth. And it's a journalist who has that access to go all the way up to finding the truth, right? So that it can be brought to the public, so that the public could make the right decision. And it's even going to be challenging in time to come. There's a question of, if you look at the Reuters 2025 trends report, the question is also rising, okay, what will be the role of AI in journalism? Because in the future, you get up in the morning and probably are going to say, Alexa, what is the latest? So are you going to, which site is Alexa going to go, and the credibility and authenticity. So it's a combination of good journalism that needs to be there, and I believe it will be there. And people, when we talk about all these interventions and the improvement of critical thinking, people will eventually come and understand where the critical and the truth is being reported. And that is where journalism will matter.
And
I'm sure it's
the
going
problems there have to do a lot with where money is flowing to, and business models and so on, which I think we'll talk about in the next panel. Rahul, Deepanjalie, did you want to add anything on the journalism side before we move to the...
Very quickly, because referring to that example that I gave and what Kumar is saying, what we can see is that when journalists make these mistakes, it's not mostly intentionally but inadvertently, simply because they lack those skills to distinguish truth from untruths. And that's where I think we have to also focus a lot on education.
I want to come to AI. Again, there's a whole panel on AI. That is our second panel after this, the last panel. But Rahul, do you use AI? You touched briefly on the scale of, on the problem of scale. Somebody has to make a decision on, that's the story I will fact check. So that's one example where humans have limited capacity, time, etc. Whereas an algorithm could probably scan everything that came out in the last 5 minutes on Twitter, which is a large quantity of information, look at virality potentially if you had access to the data, and run some algorithms to say, this combination of words is appearing, or whatever, I don't know, right? How much do you use AI? Do you see that changing fact-checking in any meaningful way these days?
See, AI again can be used for both benefit or creation. Okay, we've been seeing a lot of AI-based scams, celebrities, politicians endorsing a lot of products.
So like enhanced videos and all of that.
No, yeah, this is like you'll feel these videos are to people who do not understand AI, they would feel these are original videos only. So that's the other part of it. How are we using it? See, AIs have always been used, whether we were using simpler reverse searches or InVid or transcripts. But at Crescendo now what we're doing, we're also trying to use AI to build funnels.
Funnels?
Yes.
Okay.
So funnels would be, we have certain data sets of keywords and other things with us for the past so many years. And we're trying to build if these, words or these data sets, especially in terms of consumer, if we're talking about brands and all. So can we keep an eye on certain, events with certain brands that would trigger some sort of, misinformation against them? Like we saw in Israel war, there were a lot of brands those were targeted. Yeah. There are a lot of brands which gets targeted during specific events. So we're trying to build it. Yeah. And we're seeing like if we can get results by those funnels which are related to, if we don't need 10,000 of results. We just need 50, 60 of results every day that we get for these particular, set of criteria that we had put in. So that is where we are trying to use AI, and we'll see how it
So I mean,
goes.
our sort of approach, we've also done some work on this, has always been let AI do the first level of fact checking, but you'll need to escalate it to a human moderator at some point.
Now,
right?
now coming back to that.
Yeah.
So human intervention will always be required. It will always be required. An example is if we're doing a voice sampling on an AI, and initial result it gives you is 95% the voice is matching. So it's a speculation. It's a machine saying 95% is matching. The moment you add a...
So like a fake video where the voice is... Okay. Yeah.
It could be a fake video or it could be original telephone conversation. So now a lot of people are using AI to understand whether this is true or it's a fake one. But however, what happens is like, even if the AI is giving 95%, you add some traffic noise to it, you add some sort of external voices to it, and the same, the video or the audio, the result will come down to 30%. So how do you trust it? So human intervention, I think, will always be required, just to cross-check all the,
And how much does sort of language matter? Is it easier to do it in English but harder in, I don't know, pick a language?
English is what most of the models are trained at. Hindi, yes, because it's largely spoken, but other languages, even other countries, there is the models are not too good that they can yield those kind of results.
Nipunika, I want to come to you, to your audience. Do they sort of identify how far AI has come? I mean, are there examples of AI in your training and videos and stuff that they use? Does this resonate? I mean, because some of it is so realistic, right? Yeah.
Yes. Talking about the audience, Helani, our audience have two segments, I would say, specifically identified two segments. First one is the one who knows to write a letter using AI why he missed football practice. The second one is the one who doesn't know what ChatGPT is. And in this second audience, there are girls and boys who have an email address just because they want to create a social media account, because we had this conversation 2 days ago in the office, because we are looking at continuously to improve our programs, because mostly our audience is youth. So this is the segment that is available in Sri Lanka right now, specifically in the youth markets. So AI definitely needs to include it as a supporting tool on the work we do, because our work has evolved with the use of AI. So it should be used, the people should be trained to use it as a tool to make their lives easier. We should not escape from there. The current demand in the ground is that prompt engineering should be there as a course or as a module for the children below O-level classes, because they use it.
Yeah.
It's, before it gets out of control, there has to be a mechanism or a model to teach AI, especially from very young age.
Thank you. Kumar, AI and journalism. What's the SLPI sort of telling them about AI?
So what we have done is, now I think like we're starting at the topmost level, because I strongly believe like the tone at the top and the change at the top will basically bring the introduction and the usage of using modern technologies in. So we have done programs with the editors for them to understand how AI can actually help in their work. But as Rahul said, like, I mean, we're basically saying use it as an assistant, right? Not as the primary or the replacement for a journalist. It's going to be an AI. We're looking at developing AI guidelines for newsrooms, so that, I mean, it's important, like if you look at Washington Post or New York Times, like some newsrooms have taken the stance to say like we will not use AI. But some newsrooms have said, like, we will use AI for the primary investigation, and we would also basically source it to say primary from AI, but verified by a journalist, so that it gives the authenticity to the news, right? And then we are also working on data repository that will be accessible to journalists, so that they can use an AI model to get the data which is authentic, so we know it's an authentic data that's coming in. And we're training journalists in these areas as to how to use it as an assistant, so that they can do better database journalism, investigative journalism, and it saves time also, right? Those are some of the initiatives that we have taken.
Rahul, you wanted to come in? Yeah.
I would like to add here, with AI that I see how we will be using in the coming years, it would be live fact checking. So if there's a politician who is, there's a speech that's going on, and if there's data that can be masked to, the model, So all the numbers, all the previous work or anything that the government has done, those can be on the live itself.
I mean, you
can
see
be
it
checked.
during American presidential debates, you
Yeah,
see
like-
live fact checking, right? I mean,
Exactly,
that
exactly.
truthometer or whatever moving this way or that way based on very
Exactly.
short sound clips, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay. Deepanjali, anything to add? And then I'll take some audience questions.
Because everyone has spoken of AI as a problematic space and also as an opportunity space. What I'd like to speak of is how we can intervene in this space where information is disrupted by using AI. And that's exactly why we have to come up with tools now. We have to, of course, focus on using AI to make our work efficient as well. That's something that we are doing, for example, in the work that we are doing through Manthri.lk, we are looking at AI as well. But overall, what I want to highlight is on Trace It, the publishing standard that really helps people not to be deceived by the fakery that is done by using AI. This is the publishing standard that allows people to, especially the reputable online publishers, they are most welcome to use this very simple QR code in their content so that nobody can actually misrepresent or misreport what you have already said. So Verité has taken this stance where none of our content is going out without Trace It. So if you come across anything that doesn't have Trace It, that is not from Verité, and we welcome all of the other publishers here as well to adopt the same method. So this is one way of tackling AI-related issues.
And is that a Sri Lankan thing or is it
Yeah,
a global
it's a Verité
standard?
initiative, and we are happy to help anyone adopt that
Okay,
free of
wonderful.
charge.
Any questions from the audience for any of the panelists, please? I see from Lakshman Bandaranayaka, and then I'll come to this table too, then from in front. Yeah.
Helani, I have 3 questions, but in the interest of time, I understand if you don't get responses for all 3. First is to Rahul. Rahul, India is such a complex society, and it is highly fragmented in every conceivable way. Religious to political to color of the skin, you name it. Now, what are the unique challenges you face in fact checking in such a complex, highly fragmented environment? My second question is about the personality effect. Could be, movie stars, or could be powerful politicians. Take for example, Mr. Modi, Prime Minister. Before election, there were blatant lies about his political appointees. Now, his followers may perhaps know that these are lies, may or may not, but they still believe. Now, in an environment, particularly political environment, where India is increasingly turning to autocracy, I'm sure there are various challenges in countering falsehoods propagated by politicians. Those are my 2 questions. And the question to Kumar, you mentioned about journalists, ethics of journalists, and what the ideal conduct of journalists should be. Well and good. But in Sri Lanka, we have observed the mainstream media is increasingly, certain segment of the media and popular media is increasingly become divisive and also, create false impressions, false information, particularly in signal media. I think Helani mentioned that, or Isuru, that signal news consumers are less skilled in accepting or evaluating legitimacy of a certain. So, give an example. We know that a certain Sinhala newspaper, which is extremely popular, was behind inciting ethnic disharmony, and particularly, one particular case of this surgeon. So, what can we do? Okay, you can conduct any amount of workshops, but if a powerful journalist decide to be biased, I believe that is will be really, really, and it is really, really a big challenge. So how can we respond to that?
Thanks. We'll take that and we'll come back to you, Dara, after that, and Nalaka. So quick responses, I think, to Lakshman's question.
Okay. I'm audible, right? So, what I understand, because it was a long,
It was a long question, he's saying.
Not long question. After me, there was a second question. So, what I understand, one was related to the complexities in India, right? Yes, we do face that. And like you have a session on media after this. What we feel, rather than, politicians, media is become the instrument. Either it is for TRP or, misquoting someone, or deliberately trying to push certain, like we saw during the war, Indian media, some of the outlets became a joke worldwide. So, one, countering those kind of narratives is not complex, because it's black and white, can be easily proved. Coming from politicians is, most of the time these are opinions. So how this happens is, like, there's a opinion that is thrown. Now that opinion in social media, when it is picked up by, at times we see this is a very, coordinated way of spreading. So somewhere down the line, that opinion becomes, picks up some sort of claim to it. Only when there is a claim to it, it gets fact-checked. So most of the cases that I'm talking about. Politicians, yes, it becomes difficult with the way our media ranking is now in terms of freedom. But we try and, like I said, if it is said by someone, then it comes down. It is said by, common people in social media will pick up the claim, will write a story, and that's how we'll put it across. Rather than, because we understand it is like directly calling you are a liar. It's better, you gave an opinion which moved into a claim, so I'll pick up the claim and I'll do the fact check on it.
Kumar?
Yeah. I don't have a clear-cut answer, but I think the fact remains, like, there are good journalists, and then there are the ones who are not up to the mark of not following ethics and the code. For me, it's a constant engagement, and I totally understand, it is deteriorating, but then there are still newsrooms that are still trying to uphold good ethics and journalism. I strongly feel like there is a role that the consumers also have a part to play, and this is something that I've been talking about. See, when we find a product that we think it's not good for our health, when we think it's not good for consumption, I think we move away from it. But what I don't see in our consumers, when I talk about consumers, the readership or the viewership, is we don't practice the same pattern, because it'll go back to the example that Isuru was also saying. There are people, they know it's a gossip site, but they still want to be in the gossip, right? And I think it goes back to that critical thinking where people say, look, what is hitting you? Today, if you talk about climate change, the only time we talk about solar energy, climate change, is when it hits our pocket with our electricity bill, right? Similarly, we also need to have that responsibility or show that agitation or that non-acceptance of unethical media by not consuming to those products. Why are we watching that news? Why are we purchasing that paper? Why are we subscribed to it, right? Because I think that consumers can also hold people accountable, saying that, look, I don't like your product, so I'm not going to subscribe to it. So it's a two-way thing. So while we constantly face this challenge, we are talking to the editors, we are talking to them, and they're also kind of saying, yeah, we made a mistake, this and that. But it's a constant struggle. It requires constant engagement, but it also requires an outside engagement to show, saying that, look, I don't like this, I'm not subscribing. So I think that would also kind of help to bring that pressure and to build a little bit more into
Thanks,
things.
Kumar. Dara, we'll take questions from you and Nalaka in the interest of time, and then we'll do a round of answers. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So am I audible? Yeah. Okay, I have two questions, probably complementary. So number one, like with the most of the social media platforms going or probably, with aiming to move away from fact checking to like community notes, how do you see the roles of fact checkers evolving? And the second part being, with the rise of AI or Gen AI models, be it ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, or Perplexity, anything, do you see roles of fact checkers evolving in a way that we are not just fact checking a piece of content which is out there on the social media platforms, but also the sources which feeds these AI models? The reason being, models will spit out based on the sources that they have. So yeah, these are the questions.
Thank you. Nalaka.
Yeah, this question is to the three panelists who come from fact-checking entities. It's simple. Do you find over the last few years, the other side, the originators of disinformation or falsehoods, are learning to dodge you better? Are they increasingly becoming unfact-checkable? Because this is a trend I have seen, particularly in political speeches in this country. So, do you keep an eye on the other side, the dark side, whether they are learning to outsmart you? That's my question.
Really simple question there, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really simple question because yes, they, like I said, opinions. That's how it's come to now. They will put something like, they'll put some facts which are true, but subtly they will put in something which is very untrue. So the reader who is reading it has already built his trust on the above points, and then he accepts this point too, and it would also come as an opinion. I feel, or this is said, or research suggests. However, there's no research, but that would come in. So yes, this is there. And as I spoke about politicians, normally it happens in the cases of politicians, but we wait, we keep an eye, and down the line, it becomes a claim, because opinions, once it is generated on certain level, down it becomes, it becomes a claim, like it is taken, that context is taken out of it, and that starts propagating, and that's where we fact check it. But yes, they're learning. They're learning from.
I think even that question requires an answer. I think Verité is sort of more nuanced stuff, and then how the journalists.
I cannot anyway not speak of factcheck.lk without giving due credit to Nalaka as well, without whom we wouldn't have been able to establish factcheck.lk in 2018 with the support of IMS. You are right. I think they are learning the skills, but that also in a way is the positive story to some extent, because the fact that they are also scared of being fact-checked or having that label out there that they are a liar or that they are actually blatantly lying all the time is something that's also de-incentivizing. I can't get this word right. That really demotivate those people to really, come out and be liars. So I think in a way, that's something that's helping fact checkers and also those who are consuming information as well. So that hesitation or fear is also partly working. But the fact that they are also becoming unfact checkable is also something we have to watch out for. Because then if they are dodging us from the way that you are also observing it, how do we also navigate through that challenge is also something that we have to explore.
I think it's going to be a Tom and Jerry show, right? Simple as that. I mean, like the virus guards, the Cisco firewalls, whatsoever. It's the intruders, the hackers, and the protectors. This is how it's going to be. The game is going to go on. But I think what we're also not seeing here is like when you see sometimes fact checkers take their biasness also. And you need to start now looking at whether we need fact checkers to fact check the fact checkers, right? Because that's where we also look at sometimes the scenarios. So I think it's again going back to like, for me, if there was good journalism, probably we may not be looking at fact checking, because probably people would go back to authentic media saying, look, journalists are doing the right part. But since we have kind of compromised in that area, we need fact checking. And then the dynamics of information channeling, dissemination has changed, so it becomes really harder. So it's a Tom and Jerry game, and it's a continuous work. Going back to the AI, again, you look at the AI models like from Gemini, Copilot to Perplexity and so on, it's all going back to data. Who has that data, what authenticity you have, and again, who is creating this data? Today it's becoming so difficult to say, like, is this body an authority in providing this data? That is also a challenge that we have. So the fact seekers unit that we have constantly goes through this struggle.
I want to broaden the question Dara had. She was asking about sort of that interaction of your fact check, community notes and other platform specific tools that you also have access to, as do we. Also, you could potentially, if you are a trusted flagger, this is why I'm broadening it, you could tell the platform, forget putting it out on a website, it might be enough to just tell the platform actually, and if they take it down, maybe this horrible, untruth-filled world is one that after the platforms have all done their amazing work based on your fact check, right? So talk to us about that interaction really, about the platform-enabled tools, where the information goes up to them as opposed to out to us. Why do you do one versus the other? Do you do both? Do you use platform tools and so on? Maybe Rahul, you can take a crack at that.
See, we work with Meta. Now, there is a misunderstanding on removing of content. Fact checkers does not have the ability to remove the content. We will write an explanatory article on why the claim, which is evidence-based, based on certain code of conduct, and we would tag it to that post. Now what happens internally is the same post all across the platform gets tagged, and so it's like multiplying your work. So that's what we do. Removing of content is solely on the platform.
At the discretion of the platform.
That's the community thing,
sure.
they do it. So that is what we do.
But are you a trusted flagger for Meta then?
Yes.
Yes. Do you have a sense of, and maybe this is also for Nipunika, because I think you are a trusted flagger for
Yes.
Meta as well, right?
Yes, we do.
Do you all know when something that you flagged is taken down or actioned upon in any other way? And if so, do you have any data on how many or what percentage that was taken down?
Again, the misunderstanding. Not taken down because community is so their set of rules for community guidelines are different. That is being taken care of. So this would be against certain religious something, or against women's something, or about.
Sure, yeah.
So what we do is, like, it's simple. There is a misinformation that has been posted. We're writing an article giving certain evidences based on what is the guidelines laid. We are tagging that article. Internally, they then match their algorithms, match it to other articles, and that's how your work gets multiplied, and they kind of reduce.
So they can address the virality problem.
Now, impact, there are reports, those are shared with us. I can't give the numbers, but the numbers are amazing. Those goes in millions.
Amazing meaning millions are
articles getting
deprioritized or checked.
Reduction of those. So that is how it works. But there is no removal.
Is that your
Yes.
experience as well?
Yes, exactly the same experience, but I have to add one thing. Maybe it's because of the geographical location or the market. I would say the exact information, what happened, what action was taken on this particular case, we do not get the entire back-end story. It's just a very brief communication. That's what we get.
Okay, so you know that there's a lot of this story that got tagged, for example.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. We're nearly out of time. I have sort of two questions. Who should be fact-checking? I mean, I'm specifically thinking about, should government be running a fact-checking unit?
Okay. I could answer that because in India there's a lot of discussions and there was a lot of push that happened that has been challenged in courts. And there are certain cases which are going in court and there is another state government which has now come up, So, see, why would government want to get into fact checking? The first thing is, why would they want to get into fact checking? Media should always be independent. The moment you have regulation, yes, they can, they can set certain guidelines on, this is how it should be, but there shouldn't be, it shouldn't be imposed. Self-regulatory bodies, I think, can be an answer to this. So there can be SROs that can be set up. And these regulatory bodies can very well, and the regulatory body should have people who are prominent in that field, who have been, pioneers. But government fact checking is, for me, it's a no.
So self-regulation will do, and
Yes.
the regulatory bodies should be independent and trustable, and they should fact check.
Yes,
in a way.
and self-regulatory bodies are getting formed now, region-wise. South Asia is having a body, EFC, European
Okay.
have one.
So no to government fact checking. Deepanjalie.
I think everyone should be a fact checker, and fact checkers should not occupy a special status in society, because fact checking should be an integral part of journalism and of our consumption, especially if it is like media or social media, digital sphere, whatever it is. We should embrace those critical skill thinking, and also we should be able to fact check what we are really experiencing and reading out there. So fact checking is definitely not this some special designated job that a special group of people should be doing, and the solution that we should be looking at is not to have a plethora of fact checking organizations, but rather to have the principles of fact checking and to also carry on like these specialties that all these fact checking initiatives have created for themselves. But at the end of the day, everyone should be a fact checker.
Fantastic. Thank you. Kumar?
My question is, why would government want to have a fact-checking unit if they can put out the right, honest information out, right? Then that should be the case. But we know it doesn't happen. It's ideal state. So I would say they shouldn't. But I would say they can play a role in regard to bringing in certain standards, regulation that can prevent those who are manufacturing these type of false information to be taken for certain action. Right, and I think like we're not going to talk about OSA, but then we're talking about how they could play that role in regard to kind of preventing. It's like a traffic violation, preventing an accident, creating those. I think that role is something that they could play. But I agree, like a co-regulation or regulated bodies can actually come into play, or independent regulation bodies can come into play.
So civil society organizations fact checking slightly better?
I think yes. Yes, definitely.
The other side would argue, if we don't like the government stuff, we can at least vote them out. Maybe not in Sri Lanka, but in some, countries you can vote them. So you can't vote out civil society, and they can be fact-checking. Is there a danger there in assuming that they don't have political interests?
No, that's what I said. It is coming to a point where we also need to kind of looking at fact-checking the fact-checkers. Right? It's coming to that point. But I think what the combination of all what we have been doing is probably bringing the spark into everyone to say like, I need to fact check the information that I'm consuming, bringing that critical thinking. So that's where I start.
Nipunika?
Yeah.
Government fact checking?
Definitely not.
Not.
The experts explained why it should not be, so I'm not going to add more my 2 cents there. But I believe what Deepanjalie said is true. It should be a collaborated effort where the experts play the role and is supported by the other interest parties. Civil society, journalists, the trainers, the educators, all of those should be included in the process of fact-checking, so that we go to the phase which Kumar said that fact-checking is not needed, where we have the trust on the news we get.
Wonderful. I want to pose a last question to you. Imagine a world where there is unlimited money, okay? and you can implement in Sri Lanka something that you think will really help this problem where we have a lot of untruths, it's influencing people's lives and politics, possibly not in the best way. It has implications on freedom of expression and other rights. It hurts certain marginalized communities more. Economics are involved, power is involved, and people are unable to discern. So that is that complicated system we live in. Money is not an objective, and you can design programs and policies or laws or technologies to solve this problem. And you have to prioritize, and the funder says, what do you want to do? And you can pick one thing. What would you do? Very short 1 minute answer, I want. I think, let me start with you. I think that's easy. You will do more research, I have a feeling. Yeah?
Yes. So obviously that's the answer. So where you have like, unlimited money and all those things, then there are a lot of like external factors that we couldn't factor into our research. So I would design a research that can like study like at least representation of the information ecosystem that every citizen is working on. So capturing that and how far you can go to the truth of out there through a research and identifying those gaps will be the priority.
Okay, so research. Rahul, what's your priority?
Okay, so what I would like to do is like build a curriculum-based ecosystem where critical thinking and other parts which are very essential and in a way give those tools right from, I mean tools as in build those kind of skills right from primary level in these children who are again going to become the citizens and responsible workers in the society. So I would like to build that ecosystem where education is given in critical thinking and other parts
so
of
really integrated into
integrated.
It's
It's in the education. It's there in the education. I think that's the solution.
Fantastic, thank you.
Education, and I will definitely make sure that there is this emphasis placed on the importance of having education as the key pathway through which information disorder can be prevented and reduced. And to do that, I will also make sure that all these public service platforms that we are running, including EthicsEye, FactCheck.lk and The Divide, are also doing their service as they are, because we can see the impact, and I would like to very much continue that very societal impact that we have been making. And this is exactly where the government should playing a role in terms of being the source of education. Because the role that the government can play, not in terms of regulation and all of these aspects in this particular problem, but it is in the hands of the government to be the, to really facilitate that education, that process, to help this society prevent itself from information disorder. And one last sentence, if I have that unlimited funding, I would make sure that no child above grade 8 would come out without having those critical skills and all these skills that are required to fight information disorder.
Thank you.
I will just echo all what these three said, right? Because I think they pretty much said everything. But I think I would look at education as number one, where we need to have the system, how the private sector as well as the state sector. Both, we have a lot to do in the education sector to build that critical thinking. So agree on that. And then definitely bring in more investment into media newsrooms so that the resources are there so that they could actually carry the good job of good journalism going forward.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the panel summarized everything. I'll put it in 2 words, 3 words actually: education, empowerment, and Shramadana. We are Sarvodaya. So we believe in collaborations, collective efforts. That's what all 3 of them said. So we believe in Shramadana, and we believe in education and the empowerment to stand with the truth, to defend the truth.
Thank you. I find it fascinating that everyone believes and still believes that changing humans is the solution, right? Given how hard it is to do, And we aren't, maybe except for Kumar, we are not addressing structural things that also need to change, like competition and business models and incentive schemes. I think they are possibly maybe even harder to change. But thank you for engaging. Thank you to the audience for sitting through this.